Discover the best-kept secrets from the leading entrepreneurs across the globe. Learn from the greatest minds in business with the MyCoda podcast. Here's your host, Sam Payne.
Hello and welcome to the show. Now, guys, I am super excited to bring you today's guest, Jess Catorc. Now, Jess, I first found Jess because I follow Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income podcast, and she approached Pat with a video over Facebook, and she tagged Pat in the post, and the video can be seen in the show notes below as well. So if you're listening to iTunes, guys, jump over to the blog and you'll be able to check the video out because it's incredible what she's done. She really sort of thought outside the box and done something which got Pat's attention and ultimately landed her on the Smart Passive Income podcast. And it's by thinking outside the box like this where she positioned herself, where Pat was going to see her and take notice of her, and ultimately landed her an interview. And Pat gets hundreds and thousands of interview requests every single week, day, month. And it's very hard to be seen. It's very hard to stand out. And Jess is the only person who's done it. And I don't know anyone that's done it since either. So I was very impressed with Jess, actually. And it really excited me because I wanted to get her on the show, because anyone that thinks that way is someone that could potentially encourage, enthuse, teach the audience of the MyCoda podcast how to think differently. And ultimately, it's this way of thinking that gets you one step ahead of the crowd because you're doing things differently, right? So I'm excited to get Jess on today. And Jess is a specialist when it comes to web design, especially for entrepreneurs. She's helping entrepreneurs all over the world just build websites for their businesses that convert. It's that simple, because with WordPress being so accessible, there are so many bad websites out there. And people just think it's a case of just slapping a website together, throwing it out there, and people will come. And it's such a huge misconception, because you can't just do that. The way I compare this, guys, is I say to people, and you may have heard me say this before in the podcast, but it's like you've got a picture, the biggest, longest, busiest high street you can. Hundreds and thousands of people up and down this high street all day long, lined left to right with shops all the way down, okay, as far as you can see. And you've just bought a shop on that high street, okay? You've just bought a shop on that high street. Then what? How do you stand out? What do you do to bring people into that shop? A website, in my eyes, is very similar to this, because you could put a website up quite easily. It's easy to buy a shop. You don't even need a lot of capital, because there's so many opportunities for investment out there these days as well. So you could literally set up a business in a shop quite easily. But it's the little things you do that make a difference, that are going to draw people into that shop, that are going to make you stand out from the crowd, from your competitors, from anybody else in that same niche or industry. That's why when you walk down a high street, you've got loads of different fashion lines all up one street, but they're all doing relatively well, especially and you can see the ones that are doing well because they're huge stores. And they've got tons of traffic in and out of that store all day long, turning over payments all day long, so you know they're doing well. Now, you know the ones that aren't doing well because they're empty and they don't stand out. And it's exactly the same as websites, guys. And there's stuff you need to do to make sure that, one, you're getting traffic to your website, and two, once it's there, people are going to be engaged with your content, with your products, with your services. They're going to resonate with it. They're going to be excited by it. They're going to want to stay there, hang around a little bit, and potentially shop. Okay? So Jess is doing so much good work with entrepreneurs and helping them establish this. So this is really important, guys. And I think this is an episode that everybody, and I mean absolutely everybody, can learn something from, because the way things are going these days, I say these days, they're already gone. Okay, the way things are gone and they're continuing to go is everybody has got to have an online presence of some description. Okay, they have to. So, guys, I encourage you to really sit and listen to what Jess has to say in this interview, because, one, I mean, she's just really cool anyway. She's such a lovely person. She really did deliver so much value on this. She thinks outside the box. She puts a completely different perspective on how things are done. And she teaches so many key learning points which you can take away and action in your own websites today, which can help you, one, increase conversions, two, increase traffic, 3, keep people on those web pages. So many key points come from this one, guys. So sit back, relax, enjoy. And this is the MyCoda podcast with Jess Catorc. What's up, everybody? Sam Payne here, and welcome to the MyCoda podcast. Now, today's guest is Jess Catorc. Jess helps entrepreneurs create their own websites and build their own brands and set up their own online businesses via jesscatorc.com. She is also the host of Making the Entrepreneur podcast and hosts her own DIY online courses. Jess, how are we doing today?
Hey, Sam, it's going great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I mean, we were just speaking before we come on there, and I was really excited to get you on because we've kind of gone down the same path with just butchering ourselves in front of WordPress for hours and days and months trying to learn this process. So I think it's going to be really cool to see what you've learned and how you're now using that to help people. So before we actually kick this off, though, for the guys out there that may not be familiar with you, could you just give us a bit more information about yourself and what it is you do?
Yeah, so basically what I do now in my business is I help entrepreneurs create their own websites. But my whole passion for entrepreneurship and web design actually started when I was 12. Technically a little bit before then, when I had my own little lemonade stands and we'd go to the dollar shop and then sell things on our front lawn. But when I was 12, I started playing on this virtual pet website called Neopets. And the whole concept of the site was you could feed your pet, you could play online games with it, you got points. But there was this element on that site where you could create your pet its own page. I think back in those days, it was almost like a kid-friendly blog. Like you could basically put any content you wanted. But I didn't realize it. But in order to do that, you actually had to learn coding, so HTML. So I kind of actually learned web design at that age indirectly. I just thought it was another game. And that's what sparked my interest in web design. And as I was going through school, literally any class that I could get in, like computer programming, digital media, I was in it. And then I just continued to work in that industry, partly for myself when I was doing one-on-one work. But then I moved to Australia and started working in digital media. And then eventually one of the companies I was working for asked me to learn WordPress. And I honestly thought it would be a walk in the park. So I kind of brushed it off and I told them I'd teach it to myself. And then as we were discussing earlier before we started, it was the hardest thing. Like I thought it would be easy. It was just so overwhelming. And all I could think of was like someone with web design experience was struggling. I could not imagine what other people had to do. So I started just doing one-on-one work, creating websites, and I started niching more into entrepreneurs and making their websites. And then the more and more that I was working with them, the more I heard the same thing, which was most of them had at one point when they were on a budget tried making their own websites, but they faced the exact same thing that we both did, which was they struggled and then they ended up having to hire someone. And so that was probably the pivotal moment where I realized, well, I could start a business and I could teach people how easy it's actually supposed to be and how easy it actually is. And so that's what I've been doing since.
That's awesome. And you said there as well, you started learning this when you was in Australia, and we just discussed you've been in London for the past 2 years. I mean, you get about quite a bit, right?
I've traveled a bit, yes.
Cool. So how come you're traveling around so much? Is that just for work? Do you go because of opportunities? I mean, what's the story behind that?
To be honest, I think I got the travel bug, quote unquote, because when I was 18, because I actually had two passions growing up. I actually danced as well. My mom was a dance teacher. I was a former professional ballet dancer. And when I was 18 years old, I got my first professional gig and I toured with Princess Cruise Lines. So we did North America and South America. And I think being that age and just seeing so many different places in such a short span of time, that was when I was just like, oh my gosh, like there's so much to see in this world. So when I went to Toronto to get a certificate in digital media, and then from there, I just decided, well, why don't I do like the working holiday visa in Australia? Just because I was missing that, I don't know, it's just there's something about being in a different culture, a different place. So I was born in France, so I had a French passport. And then so from Australia, once my working holiday visa finished, I thought, well, I didn't really want to go back home just yet. So I decided, well, why don't I just live in London? You know, no language barrier. And so that's basically why I moved.
That's awesome. And I suppose the nature of your job, you can pretty much serve clients all over the world, right? I mean, you must have built some pretty cool networks of people by moving around so much.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I didn't actually start my business like when I was working remotely, like for myself, until I was really in London, as in like properly when I had everything set up. So, but that's when I really appreciated it. And now that I'm moving to the States, having a business that still runs exactly as it was, when I was here or when I'm in London. Yeah, no, it's incredible.
So you touched on there that, I mean, even at 12, you started delving into, without even knowing it, sort of HTML and stuff on this sort of kids program you was using. You was always sort of selling lemonade stands and that. So, I mean, as entrepreneurship, is this something that's always been in your blood?
Do you know, it's funny. And I remember distinctly, I think I was around 8 years old, and I just had it in my head that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I don't know how I knew what that meant. But I grew up with a really inspiring single mom, and her entire career was very unconventional. She was a professional ballet dancer. So it was never in my head that I'd have to go to university, get a 9 to 5 job, and basically work in corporate for 30 years. And so I think just growing up, I was always encouraged to do things differently. If I had a crazy idea, it was never of if I was going to do it. It was always how. So I tell my mom, Mom, I want to do this. I want to start my own. I had my like little magazine that I made when I was like 10, I think. She's like, great. So how are you going to do that? How often are you going to do it? So I think just being encouraged as I was growing up made a big difference.
Yeah, that's such a good point, actually, because I've just read a great book called A More Beautiful Question by Warren Berger, and he literally, it goes back to that question he was asked, well, how are you going to do that? It's using questions to open up your mind to think of the possibilities and the ways that you can do things. And I suppose having that growing up, that sort of conditioning growing up, has been such a benefiting factor and something that's contributed to your success today, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. I think when you can get that mindset shift to happen, it's incredible. I mean, we were connected. I think you heard my episode on SPI. And I almost didn't do that because I was just like, oh, I don't know, like, who am I to pitch myself forward to be on this podcast? And my mom, again, she's just like, just do it. It's like, you have to, once you get your mindset to change, the things that you actually do go for and the risks that you take, I mean, risks, I say that in quotations, I think they change.
Yeah. And do you know, it comes to what I've discovered with this podcast, and something that really was refreshing for me was, all you have to do is ask. Like, these guys that are high flyers, so to speak, that are killing it in the entrepreneurial world, are still people, and they're still open to helping so many other people. So, I mean, if there are other guys listening today that are thinking of doing their own podcast or approaching these people to be mentors, I mean, you just got to ask, right? Because these guys are so open to helping other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, let's talk about the SPI thing as well, because this is how I first heard of you, through the SPI podcast. But unlike other guests, I mean, Pat Flynn must get hundreds of emails every single day about podcast requests and stuff. So I've often thought, well, how can I get on the SPI podcast, or how can I get Pat on my podcast? And what I found was, when I found you, was how refreshing your approach was. I thought it was incredible, the video you made. And it's funny because I spoke to someone about this video, and they were saying, yeah, but that must have cost a lot of money, and just to get on a podcast show, a lot of time and money, and they didn't really see the benefits of it, which I thought was crazy. So, I mean, firstly, what went into putting that video together? I mean, did you get a professional film crew to do that? How much time did it take? And if you don't mind me asking, I mean, how much did you have to invest in getting that video put together, sort of time and monetary wise?
Yeah, no, totally. And it's a really good question. One of the things that I've been doing is, so there's quite a few clips in there. And one of my strategies has been to always create content and have content handy. So for my video series, my online course and video series, I got it professionally filmed. But then I asked them, okay, can we do some clips, like different clips of me, like working, walking, like kind of the clips that you see in the video. When I went back home, I asked one of our like family friends who's a videographer to film me, like in the snow. So I had those clips handy. And then the very last one was, I had a workshop at Google Campus, and I hired someone to film that workshop. But then what I asked him was like, okay, well, after we do this, I'd love to, like, I asked him if he knew about the podcast. He had, obviously. And I was like, well, I want to do a video pitch. So I had everything kind of laid out for the scenes that I wanted to have. I knew what I was going to say. And so I had it already planned out. And then we just shot those clips. Now, like cost wise, what I did is, again, one of the benefits of DIYing things is you can save a lot of time and money. I actually just paid for his time for the day. So it was around like, I guess equivalent, it was like £350 between that for the day. But then all those, like the clips that I got, I can use that, you know, for anything that I want to do, upcoming promos, trailers. So it's not necessarily just like, okay, you're paying that much just for a promo video. It's what you actually get back in return and what you can do with those clips as well.
So the content becomes evergreen. You can just pick and choose it as and when you wish, I suppose.
Totally, yeah. And then I just edit it all myself, which obviously saves time and money than having to pay someone to edit everything and put it together. And they also don't know your vision. So they don't know how you want that video to be.
And do you know, I've tested this recently as well, because I've been working with a client. His name's Greg. He's got a training program called High Performance One. And for the first time, I actually got a film crew in, much like yourself, and I got them to film him doing motivational speaking, exercising, training, and then he done like a really cool voiceover over the top, and I just got them to pull it all together, and then I used that video for a Facebook ad. And that's the best performing Facebook ad I've ever had. We've got so much engagement off that video just because the quality was just so much better than what everyone else was putting out. So I can definitely see the return on that. So, I mean, how have things been for you since you've been on the SPI podcast? I mean, what sort of return have you got just from putting that video pitch to Pat?
It's been crazy. It was in a great way. There was a lot of email responses, a lot of emails coming in. I mean, the return on my investment in that video has been, I mean, you can't even compare it. It well paid for itself. But it's not even that. It's more of just the experience of actually doing something where you don't know what the outcome is going to be, and then actually following through on it. I think that was the biggest thing, because like I said, I almost didn't do that video because I had those doubts, and I was just like, well, who am I to, you know, do this? This is silly. To actually follow through on that and see what can come from that, I think that is probably hands down the most valuable thing that came from it.
And guys, for the guys that are listening today as well, if you are interested to see that video, I will put that video in the show notes. You can check that out because it is brilliant. And you mentioned there, Jess, as well, that you edited that yourself. So people might be questioning, okay, so how did you edit that? I mean, can you just break down sort of what sort of software, what sort of processes you're using to edit your video footage?
Totally. So what I did was, so there's a couple of different things. I use After Effects, Adobe After Effects. You can use iMovie or Premiere, like Adobe Premiere Pro. After Effects is brilliant. A really great resource is videohive.net. And you can get a lot of really cool video templates. So like in that video, you'll see there's a scene of me typing on my laptop talking about how I tweeted him like way back. And you'll see like a box of like, it looks like a tweet coming up, and you can see the words like being typed in. That was from videohive.net. And then I just edited it in After Effects, exported it, and then brought that clip into when I was putting in with the rest of the scenes. So that's what I use. But honestly, you can do some really amazing things with iMovie. I'm not sure what the equivalent is for a PC. But yeah, when you have high quality videos, like video clips, even just putting them together, you don't need fancy effects, I don't think.
Yeah, and I mean, I used to love iMovie actually, and then someone introduced me to ScreenFlow, and that.
Oh, ScreenFlow is a good one as well.
Oh yeah, incredible bit of software. I love that software as well. But I'll put the links to those other ones in the show notes as well. Okay, cool. And so your business itself. Now, you said you started this when you moved to London like 2 years ago, right?
It's like 2.5 years ago, yeah.
So I mean, how was that transition for you, going from doing sort of solo work with one-to-one clients to actually turning this into sort of a fully fledged business with courses and podcasts and everything else that you're offering now?
So one of the best things that I did was, so when I was in Australia, I was working for a company there. This was the company I was working for that asked me to learn WordPress. And when my visa ended, they still wanted me to work with them. So I moved to Australia and I was working just like remotely. And I used that. I would recommend to anyone, when you're starting a business, if it's possible, keep some form of income coming in that isn't reliant on your business. Just because it made things so much easier. I was from the get-go able to invest in getting like professional videos done and investing in Facebook ads and just education and online courses to learn more about it, of running a business. I just think that when people, if you, let's say, quit your job and you don't have a large savings like to rely on, it can make your decisions a bit clouded. You can be more stressed. You can make things out of fear versus being confident and taking bigger risks. So that's what I did. And then I just slowly reduced my hours more and more until I was working independently.
I think that's incredible advice, actually. And I think that's something that not a lot of people touch on enough, really, because in any sort of new business launch, revenue is something that doesn't come easily. And I suppose if you've not got a secondary income, as you talk about, you're going to be doing things for money as opposed to just the passion and the love and actually helping people, which whenever you do things just purely for monetary returns, you're never really going to get them. So, yeah, I think that's incredible advice and something that people should really take seriously and consider when they're going through their own startups. I mean, the guys you're working with actually through your business, I mean, are these guys, how are you helping these guys? Are these guys, have they all got that secondary income, or are these guys just coming in straight in for startup, no other income? I mean, what's the general gist of the stuff you're doing with people at the minute?
I mean, it's interesting. I think it was like a month ago, I sent out an email to my entire list. And I just said, hey, like, what's your background? What's your story? And it was a very short email. And because I did realize, that's a really great question. I realized that there's a lot of people, you've got people on your email list, but you don't actually know who they are, what their story is, who they are as a person versus just an email address. And I got some incredible responses, but just seeing like a lot of people have either been made redundant from their job or they have some sort of a side hustle and they want to take it full time. But I haven't seen that many people have just quit their job and just gone for it. I think most people are probably, which is great, they're hesitant and they're very aware of, their situation. But yeah, most people do have some form of an income coming in and they're just kind of waiting for that moment where they can just leave that or reduce it even more and take their job or their business rather full time.
Absolutely. And I think one perk as well, because I can relate to this because I left the military about four and a half years ago now. And I never really worked for anyone else apart from before when I joined the military when I was a teenager. But ever since I left the military, I always worked for myself. And setting up my first business, my gym, was really hard work. But thankfully, I'd done a lot of legwork while I was in my resettlement phase to get a client base to start earning an income straight away, which again, that was my income that subsidised that. And now if we move it forward to today, the gym itself almost runs passively for me. And that is an income which has allowed me to not only be more creative with what I'm doing, but to test and adjust and really try and find out what works, what doesn't work. Because then if I lose money, which I've lost quite a lot of money, to be fair, it's not too much of a hit. It's a pain in the arse, but it's not a hit. Do you know what I mean? I can still get by. So
totally.
And how's it been since you've launched, Jess? I mean, at what point did you realise that this is something that could actually work?
So I think like any entrepreneur, I knew it was going to work from like when I had the idea. Because you just get so excited about it. You're so passionate about what you're doing where you're just like, this is going to work. I don't know how, I don't know when, but you just keep going for it. But I think the first moment where I really thought, wow, this is really starting to take off, was actually when I did an interview with Carrie Green from the Female Entrepreneur Association. And she's an incredible person just as a human being. And I reached out to her well before I had anything really happening with my business, before I had my course. And I asked her if I could interview her. And she said, yeah. She's like, I love what you're doing. I'd love to support you. And she's been that person that she's always basically been there and supported me as I was growing my business. And then eventually she asked me to do like her 10-minute masterclass. And it reached obviously to her audience. And then that's when I started to see things really change with the signups I was getting, people joining my course, people interacting on my email list and my video series. So I think that was probably the first time I was just like, wow, like things are really starting to change now. So
would you agree when I say then that, and this is the case for most people, I believe, including myself, that it's not actually the work itself that I'm doing that's making the big differences in my leaps, but it's the relationships and the networks I'm building and how I'm leveraging from them as I'm going through this journey.
Absolutely. And I think, like, I used to hate the word networking. I used to hate the word, like, just thinking of, in my mind, I would think of people in suits, like schmoozing, being really fake. And I was just like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And what I found was the people that, like, I've supported and they've supported me, it's been a genuine relationship where we've connected with no, other intention than just being like, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. I'd love to feature you here, or how can I support you? But I would definitely recommend anyone listening, do focus on, no matter who it is that you're interacting with, always think of building a genuine, like, relationship and a genuine connection with them. Because, I mean, you can help them in some ways and they can also help you too.
And for the guys who are listening in today, I mean, they could be taking some board and saying, do you know what, this is great advice and I want to start doing this, but they may not be sure how to start doing this. So what's worked for you in terms of building these relationships?
To be honest, video.
Yeah.
I've reached out to a lot of people, not a lot, but like a few people with video. And what it did was, rather than, when you get an email and you read it, it's very hard to see who that person is. You read it and you read it with how you think it was intended to sound. But when you have a video, I mean, it doesn't have to be fancy. You could do it on your iPhone. But I think for people to be able to see who you are as a person, your personality, your quirks, what you look like, I think it just fast tracks that connection, because people are either going to be like, like, I don't know why, but I like that person. I feel like we could get on, or maybe not. But then you find the right group of people to really connect with, I think. So yeah. Video.
No, I think that's awesome, actually, because I mean, there's been a ton of research done, actually, and people get a lot more from your appearance, your persona, your tonality in your voice, your energy. I mean, when I'm around people personally, they can feel my energy. They bounce off that, and the relationship we can build is so much better than if it was done, like you say, just via email. So video, I suppose, is one of the quickest ways to do that virally, isn't it? I mean, because you can still feel that through a video, especially if you're being genuine.
Totally. Yeah. And I would say, I know a lot of people, whenever they hear video, they're just like, oh my gosh, I get super awkward and uncomfortable. And I think it's one of those things where you just have to practice and you have to keep doing it, because it can be hard to seem genuine when you've got like this camera in front of you and you have to memorize what you want to say. But it does, like, I remember when I first started recording video, just for like my video series, it was a hot mess. Like, I looked so uncomfortable. I mean, those videos are still online. You live and learn. But the more that you do it, you start to understand how you can communicate what you're thinking, how to do it authentically. So anyone that feels like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do video, just practice, because it does pay off and it does make a difference.
Yeah, I had a mentor, actually, and he gave me some great advice on this, and that was, every day, just do a mini vlog of a video vlog of yourself on your iPhone, just talking about anything. Just give yourself a topic. It could be breakfast. It could be how you make a cup of coffee. But just get comfortable talking about a topic into a camera. And I've done that for months. And my missus picked my phone up. She's like, what are these videos about? I'm like, don't worry, I'm just practicing.
That's amazing. That's awesome. That's a great idea.
It really worked, though. It works so well. Like, even with podcasts and stuff, like just speaking into a mic is quite daunting for the first time. But so then I just started speaking into the mic when I was doing everything.
That's awesome.
It helped. Okay, so let's. I actually want to talk about the work you're doing now with clients, and from the sounds of things, from what I've heard from other podcasts and the things you've said in this interview already, you've already talked about how you approach your audience and ask questions, and it seems that you do this a lot, that you actually survey a lot, you go out and ask questions a lot, you sort of beta test a lot. So have you always been this methodical in your approach to when you're sort of setting up new things or testing ideas? And have you, by not doing this, have you ever not done this, shall I say? And what have the differences in the results been?
To be honest, I think I've done it. I don't think when I first started, I don't think it was really in like a super strategic way. I think it was for me. I mean, I've listened to a lot of podcasts where they've said like you need to beta test. But I think for me, it was pure curiosity and being new in this industry. And I think you have to recognize when you don't know something, you need to accept that and you need to learn. So for me, I knew that I need to figure out who my audience was because I mean, like you probably heard on the podcast with Pat, but I created my course and then I asked beta testers to go through it and give anonymous feedback because I wanted them to be honest because some of them probably knew me. They're like, oh, I don't want to be mean. But you get a really clear understanding as to the struggles people are facing. And I think when you can connect with those people that you're serving on a much more personal level, the content you create is so much better because it doesn't have that. I mean, you know, like when you're writing a blog post and you're not really feeling it, you're just writing it for the sake of writing it. It's not really flowing. It's just kind of a bunch of content versus when you have a purpose and you know who you're writing for, what their struggles are, what they're trying to achieve. One, it's easier to create content, but two, I just think it impacts people in a much stronger way as well. But yeah, just if you don't know, ask questions. I mean, you'll just get more information than you need, but then you can actually use that to make something good.
And people might be sitting there going, oh, another awesome idea, I've got to do this. But then they've got no one to ask. So how can you advise people to go out and start finding the right types of people to direct these questions to, and how can they get the questions to them?
So what I did was, I mean, right now there's a lot of Facebook groups for entrepreneurs. Most of them are free. What I did was I was in those groups and I was always giving, like in my case, it was website tips. And I never pitched what I was doing. I never did like those sneaky posts where it's like, hey guys, what do you think of my free video series? I'd love your feedback. And then like posting a link or something. I would just ask and be like, hey guys, like, what are you struggling with your website? Or I'll give like your website a review. And so I started to get known as like, that was the girl in the pink dress that helps people with websites. But from there, I started to build just connection with people. And then I asked them, hey guys, look, I'm doing some beta testing. Is anyone interested in testing out my course for free? So that was probably the easiest way because I was in a group with my target audience and I was giving value. And then I was still giving value by giving some people that course for free. So I'd probably say that, I mean, there's so many different groups on Facebook, no matter your industry, that I think it would probably work for most people, I'd say.
Yeah. I can agree with that, actually. I definitely agree with that. And it's funny you touched on like the sneaky posts as well, because I've seen somewhere people have gone, I'd like to test my email funnel and stuff like that. Oh, gosh. And they're literally just trying to get people into their funnels and everything by sort of quote unquote beta testing the funnels and that, you know. It's funny, isn't it? You see
people see through that. I mean, there's no way that, I mean, just if you can be always authentic and genuine with your intentions, I mean, people will always see through when you're trying to like manipulate your posts or trying to get them to do things that aren't in a genuine way. There's no point even like trying to do it.
So when you're working with your clients, I mean, do you feel that they want to just rush straight into sort of building the dream website before they actually do any legwork and establish who their target market is, what they want, if their product's even relevant? I mean, how have you found this with working with your clients?
Yes. And I mean, it's funny, but I think it must be an entrepreneurial tendency, I guess, to have like that big idea and want to just go for it. But there's a lot of people where I'll be talking with them and they've got their idea for their business and their website, and they just want to basically set up WordPress and start building it. And what you'll find though is if you do that, you might succeed, you might have a good eye for design, and you might happen to create a beautiful site. But as soon as you have to start creating content, that's when it starts getting hard. And that's when you're going to feel stumped, because when you're not clear on who you're targeting, and I mean getting down like very niche down to like a single person, it's so much harder because then you're writing for everyone. And then you're trying to please everyone. And then you'll start writing a sentence and being like, oh, does that sound right? Oh, I don't know. And it just makes things so much harder. But what I would say is before you even dive into creating it, get very clear as to who you are targeting, who you want to help. Take some time to actually speak to those people one-on-one. So whether that's connecting with people in Facebook groups and then asking, 30 minutes of their time on Skype. I did that in the beginning. No pitch at the end, just talk to them. That way you actually know you have a purpose when you're creating your site, your content, your blog posts. You know who that person is, You know the questions that they're going to have, the answers that you want to give them. So yeah, absolutely. If you can, get very clear before you start building.
And I'm interested to know as well, because you've obviously done a lot of work now with people. What are the common failing traits you see coming through? I mean, what are the big don'ts when it comes to, even if someone wants to set a website up themselves or approach someone like yourself, what are the big don'ts?
I would say, okay, so first one is ensure that you have you've got like many sources of inspiration for your design and your brand. So what I mean is I'll work with a lot of female entrepreneurs who love, let's say, like Marie Forleo. And what ends up happening is as they start to build their site, without even realizing it, I don't think anyone would ever, well, I mean, there's some people that would, but like try to copy someone directly. But when you only have one source of inspiration or someone that you admire, you'll start to find that your site just becomes another version of their brand. And it's very hard to create a unique brand where people look at it and they're like, wow, like I really like that. I've never seen that before. So what I recommend is, whether this is on Pinterest or you print out a collage of different brands and images, but try to get at least like 5 to 10 different people or brands that you admire, and then start to see what are the common traits between all of them that you seem to like. So maybe it's like a specific feature on their page. Maybe it's the color. Maybe it's one color you see over and over again. But that's how you can start to piece everything together to create your unique brand. So I think that would be the biggest one. And then the second thing I think is just a mindset. Like there's so many people, especially when it comes around tech or just when you're learning something outside of your comfort zone. We start to learn something, we get really excited. And then as soon as we're faced with something that we think is too complicated or we don't have the knowledge or the experience to be able to do it, all of these different thoughts come into our head, like we're not smart enough, I can't do this is going to take forever. And then people stop. So I don't think it's necessarily that people do things that are too complicated, but the thoughts that they're telling themselves actually stop them. So just be very aware when things get hard that you're aware of what you're telling yourself.
That's great advice. That really is. And one thing as well, which I see a lot of guys doing, and it is quite frustrating, is, and I'll speak to people, they'll say to me, I'm thinking of doing this, what do you reckon? Blah. I'm like, yeah, well, why don't you come speak to me? We can go through a few things. And they'll always say, I'm just going to try it myself actually first and see what happens. Then all of a sudden there's a myname@wordpress.com blog up with terrible website. It's not optimized. It's, you know what I'm talking about here, right?
Yes.
And then they turn around and say, I've just spent £100 on a really cool URL and host it. And I'm like, oh my God, like you should have come to me first. Like,
Yes.
So if there's someone out there that's listening today going, do you know what? I do want to give this a go myself. And that's fine. I can understand that because that's how me and you started, right? What are the 1 or 2 key points they should bear in mind before taking off and diving into this?
So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, like I teach people how to do their own websites. It's possible, but it's planning. So, you know, it's like that saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's I think when people start creating their site just as they go, that's when things can get kind of funky. You know, you start getting some weird like graphics where you're like, does it work with your brand? Do you know what your brand is? So I'd say is you get very clear. So like we were saying, get clear on who your market is. Who are you targeting? What do they want to see? Asking them what brands they like, things that they're, you know, that resonate with them. Second thing is maybe plan out the pages that you want. What do you want to have on your homepage, your about page, your blog? Maybe even have some blog posts ready to go. I think when you've got these things organized before you dive in, and also your brand. So getting clear on the colors you want to use, the fonts, getting high quality images of yourself. That's another really important one. When you have that all ready to go, then when you dive in to create your site, it will start to make sense so much quicker. You'll know, okay, I've got 5 pages I need to create. I know the content. I've got nice images. I know that I'm not going to be using every color in the rainbow on my site. I've got, 4 colors or 3 colors. And it just makes things look simple and clear. And yeah, so just definitely plan before you dive in.
No, again, great advice for people out there. That really is. I think when I was in the military, they had a great term for that. Was the 6 P's or 7 P's? Prior preparation prevents piss poor performance.
I love that.
That's
I'm
stuck
keeping
with
that.
me for a long time.
It's so true, though. It's so true.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is. Okay, Jess, we're kind of running sort of towards the end of the interview now, so we've got to wrap this up. But what is one final piece of parting advice you give the listeners today?
I would say just go for it. And when I say just go for it, I mean, obviously do plan before you do. But I mean, every time, like either if I'm like speaking or running a workshop, there's so many people that have been sitting on this idea of their website for years. It's not just months, it's like years. They're like, you know what, like 5 years ago, I had this idea and I'm, and I totally get that. I mean, I've got ideas I've been sitting on for a while, but I would just ask yourself, why is it that you haven't taken action? And I think most of the time what you'll find is it's fear and it's just unreasonable doubts as to why it's not going to work. So just go for it. Just start taking that first step and then see what comes from it. Because I think most of the time you'll be pleasantly surprised what actually happens when you do take action.
Perfect. And Jess, before we leave you today, where is the best people to find you online and how can they get in touch with you?
Totally. Well, you can visit my site, jesscatorc.com. I do have a free video series if anyone wants to start just even seeing if they should DIY their website and the resources and the things that you'll need. That's just at DIYwebsiteacademy.com.
Brilliant. And guys, I'll put a link to that in the show notes below so you can check that link out and get on that free video course. And that is it. Jess, thank you so much for coming on today. That was a great interview. Thoroughly enjoyed that one.
Oh, thank you so much, Sam. This has been fun.
Brilliant. Cheers, Jess. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Okay, guys, and there it is. Jess, thank you so much for coming on today. It was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And guys, I can thoroughly recommend getting in touch with Jess via all the contact details in the show notes below, because she's got, her website, jesscatorc.com. She's got her podcast. She's also got some awesome free resources, guys, for you to check out if you don't know whether you want to work with her yet. But also, she's doing so much awesome work with entrepreneurs from all over the world as we speak, helping them really develop an online presence that helps them stand out, okay, which is just so important. So, guys, please check her out. And just one last time, just thank you for coming on and just sharing your story with us today, because it was an absolute pleasure having you on. And guys, this is I'm going to sign off today with no real call to action. Okay, this is just me providing value to you, because the time of year I'm recording this from is December 19th, 2016. The show will go live tomorrow, so Tuesday the 20th of December, and we're on that sort of run up to Christmas now, where we can look forward to a couple of days off and really enjoy that time with friends, family, and whoever you spend your Christmas with. Okay. So, guys, for me, this is just more of a hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you've had a fantastic year up to this point. Look forward to next year and just have an incredible Christmas, okay? As entrepreneurs, we need to spend that time and invest that time in our businesses and work hard as we can, as smart as we can, as much as we can, and Christmas is a hard time because there's a lot of people around you slacking off and having a good time, and generally, I don't like to generalise, but these are generally people that are in employment. So, these are guys that have got their Christmas parties all week and they're going out having a good time. Not a lot of work's getting done. And it's very hard to stay focused and stay in the zone, especially when you've got people around you going, oh, what are you doing this week? Let's link up, let's do this, which is great. I'm all for celebrating wins and victories, and I'm all for Christmas. I'm not a Scrooge. Have a fantastic Christmas, guys. This is what it's all about, the good times. We need to have these good times, okay? That's what we're working for. So, guys, if you are on the run up to Christmas, enjoy this last week, okay? Get as much done as you can, guys. Keep consistently working away at whatever it is you're working on. Take those couple of days off. Enjoy them. Have a great time. Eat, drink, be merry, and by all means, just relax and chill out for a couple of days. Make sure you come back fresh for next week, guys, because after Sunday, Christmas Day on Sunday, after Sunday, we're back into it again and carrying forth with whatever you are working on at the minute. So, guys, Merry Christmas. I hope you have a fantastic holiday, and I'll speak to you next week. Goodbye.